On this episode of Real Wins, we dive into the topic of property management centralization, and more specifically, Charlesgate's pod model approach, what it is, how it works, and what it solves for in multifamily. If you find this or other episodes helpful, please like and subscribe on YouTube or your preferred podcast listening app. Let's dive right in. All right, Mike, welcome back. Another episode of Real Wins. It's been a little while. Summer's always tricky. I feel like there's always things happening, and boats being sailed, and family in town, and all sorts of stuff. So I keep seeing these weeks come and go, and I'm like, man, we need to have a conversation. So I'm glad we're making it happen today.
Yeah, you know me. I don't know if boating is just restricted to summer season for me, but yeah, summer is one of those times. You got the kids out of school, everyone's trying to scramble for taking care of the kids and vacation schedules and different types of things. So, but yeah, I'm excited to jump back on the saddle here and have a conversation with you, Chris. This is going to be fun.
Yes, sir. Yeah, what's been going on? So we've had the Olympics already behind us. Fall is basically knocking on the door. What else has been going on in your world before we dive in here?
Yeah, well, just trying to, enjoy a bit of the summer. Seems like every weekend it's raining out here in Boston, but although that's changed recently, so that's been much better. Getting some good family time in, which is, I think, always important. And as I said, with the kids out of school, it's an opportunity to spend a little bit more time with the family and do that. But I think also we got a lot of really exciting things in the work. We've been busy with a lot of projects that we've been selling and leasing out and managing, and so we've got a growing pipeline, and so I'm excited about that. Teams have been doing really incredible work getting projects off the ground and moving forward, and so there's been a lot of excitement, a lot of work, and we've been building a lot of cool things and working with you guys on a lot of things as well on the branding, marketing, and go to market side of the business. So excited across the board on that end.
Yeah. There's always I feel like there's always a lot of really good stuff happening at the same time, and things are continuing to be busy in a good way. So I'm excited to see what comes next as well. We actually have another live LinkedIn event happening soon here as well. So there's a lot of things percolating, and I'm excited to dive into this topic today as well, because I think this is one that keeps it has resurfaced time and time again, definitely this year, but for some reason this summer, I think this has come up a lot too. It's a topic that we touched on a recent live LinkedIn debate, but it really kind of has to do with this centralized property management approach and what that means today. And more specifically, what I want to dive into today is the approach that Charlesgate takes to this topic, because it feels like a very big topic, and frankly, a very disjointed topic when we think about marketing and sales and management and all of the things that go into this ecosystem, if you will. And so I'd love to just rip the Band-Aid off and just kind of ask you directly, given that there are so many conversations around this topic, you do have a pretty unique model at Charlesgate. Can you just high level describe what that approach is and kind of give us a place to start from?
Yeah. So centralization is sort of this buzzword that's been around the property management world for quite a while now, and everybody's been sort of talking about it and trying to think about maybe how to do it and how it works. And so I think this is starting to get more traction on a lot of operators, both owner operators and maybe some third-party operators, not maybe as many, 'cause it's a little bit more difficult in that regard, are really starting to put the steps in place, or some of the steps in place, to build a more efficient management operating model deemed quote unquote centralization. Now, I'm on record for saying I hate the word centralization, and I'm going to continue to repeat that, because I don't think that's what this is at all. At least it's not what we do. A lot of companies have deemed or are sort of pretending or faking centralization by saying we're going to move our assistant property manager offsite and put them in a centralized main office and call that centralization. But they're going to have the same job and same functional work that they're doing, which is really not what we're talking about, not what we would advocate for as a centralized way to do things. So our way is to have this system we call functional specialization. And what it is ultimately is a complete reimagining of the sort of underlying operating model of property management. And what we're doing is saying we're going to take the functions of property management, of which there are many, carve those up into individual roles, centralize some of them, but not all of them necessarily, and have the flexibility to deliver a level of services across a property or a portfolio of properties derives the best outcomes for that property, for the goals of the ownership, or whatever the goals might be for that specific property. So what that means is, well, let me just start by saying the sort of problems that are ripe in the industry right now. So you have a lot of, properties are not operating as efficiently enough. The controllable costs are higher than they need to be, driving, really hitting the bottom line in a wide and negative way. And also you've got bad employee experience from a property management standpoint, where you have a manager on an island by themselves, or a small management team on an island, who have to be jack of all trades, doing all of the functions required. And so the functions we're thinking about here are just generally like business planning for the property or portfolio. So budgeting, planning, controlling expenses, even down to the financial, paying bills, AP, AR, all the sort of necessary functions. Then you have resident management functions, so dealing with resident issues, complaints, problems, events, planning experience, maintenance emergencies and maintenance work that's required, managing a maintenance team on site who's really half utilized half the time because it's, there's not enough work, or sometimes there's overwhelming work, sometimes there's not enough work to keep them busy. Leasing is another component of that, overall financial in terms of like accounting and bookkeeping, as I sort of alluded to before. And never mind all the other services that have to happen, whether it's landscaping, janitorial, and other sort of building services. So all of these functions are generally wrapped into, in many ways, a single small on-site team, or a single small team that's sort of stretched way too thin. So we're solving for that with the model, our pod model, our team-based pod model that has specialized roles within it, that we can dive into in more detail if you'd like.
I would. I want to put a pin in specifically the maintenance line item that you just mentioned, because I have something to ask you about that. But before we do that, let's take just one step back, and I want to kind of wrap my head around, because I want to be sure that I understand that and make sure that the viewers and listeners understand it too. When we're talking about this pod model and the functional specializations that you bring into that model, what size properties are we talking about here? Because I've had very different conversations with groups that have very different sized portfolios and certainly very different sized communities. So could you clarify that?
Yeah. So the way we structured our model is there has a lot of flexibility to flex up and down on property size. We invented the model based on sort of smaller mid-market properties because it was a sort of a forcing function for us to do so and make it efficient to operate 50 unit, 100 unit, even 150 unit properties where you can't have a full on-site team. It just doesn't work economically. So that's where the system was invented. That's how we thought about it. That's how we created it, based on that. And frankly, even incorporating some of the best practices at small multi-site single family management, even to build that into a more robust multifamily operating model. And so, but at the same time, we have that's where the origination of it was, but it can scale up to be large 250, 400, 500 unit sites, and also scale down, as I said, to, even 20s or 40s or 50 unit properties in different ways. And now we can flex and bend and create a system and a team that can fit all of those property sizes in a really nice way. That's the nice thing about the system. It's got this really deep degree of flexibility in it that allows us to service properties of different types and sizes and locations in a lot of ways.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Transforming Cities, brought to you by Authentic, delivering premier multifamily brand experiences and smart digital marketing. Authentic's proven approach accelerates leasing velocity, boosts rental rates, and increases long-term value. You can find out more at AuthenticFF.com. And by Charlesgate, the multifamily investor's secret weapon to help underwrite, go to market, and operate projects that generate market-beating returns. With an adaptive staffing model and on-demand leasing teams, Charlesgate empowers a better resident experience at an efficient cost structure for today's owners. Visit charlesgate.com for more.
That's interesting you say that, because I've had a couple conversations in the last 2 or 3 weeks here that really focused on, I would say, the 75 to 150 unit, sized property. And so they weren't extremely small on the smaller end, but they weren't these sort of like bigger, 200-300 unit. Get into those, it's a little bit of a different conversation. But both of those conversations were mentioning to me that they had pretty big concerns around maintenance needs. Of all things, like, it was the maintenance piece that came up in both conversations, that the sort of the solve for that was either too much and too expensive, or not enough and things were falling apart all around them, and they needed to step in and sort of be problem solvers themselves, rather than feeling like they could rely on the maintenance team that was with their existing group. How do you approach that, where it's one season maintenance needs may be really high and then another season they may be quite low? I have to imagine that's a difficult part of this pod model.
Well, actually, it's actually a benefit of a pod model in a lot of ways. And before I even get into that specific question for a second, I will agree with you. I've been having a lot of conversations, especially recently, and from institutional investors and others who have never been able to really attack this mid-market space because there's so much inefficiency in the way the properties can operate in a traditional model. And so there's a lot of interest for capital to flow into this market because there's a lot of inefficiencies in a lot of ways. It's been relegated to small investors, local investors, mom and pops in so many ways. But what we're able to do with this model overall is to unlock the opportunity to professionalize the management structure and deliver investment grade returns or better, because again, there are opportunities to bring more professionalism and a more efficient approach to mid-market properties. Maintenance being one of those things, which you just alluded to. So I'm excited about that opportunity because I think we can serve a lot of institutional investors in a way that is unexpected for them, and deals that they may have had to pass on in the past, they now have an opportunity to attack by implementing a model such as ours. To the, I was going to answer the maintenance question if we can dive in. So on the maintenance side, maintenance is one of those things which as I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, there's a difference between centralization and the way we think about this in terms of functional specialization. And so maintenance, however, is one of those things that is very well served by centralizing. And so bringing a maintenance team together that has maybe some different specialties in it that can serve different areas, but not having a maintenance team or workers on site at a single property, which may be at times completely maxed out, but at other times be bored and reading the newspaper half the day in the maintenance office. We can actually have essentially a maintenance company on call or serving the needs of a portfolio of properties and surging to where the needs are at any given time, and also route them based on what the needs might be. So maybe again, if it's a carpentry issue, if it's a leak, if it's an appliance issue, we can have different workers, different maintenance team members serving the needs and tasks around. And so what we try to do too, though, is group them regionally as well, so we're not having like wasted drive time and other things away like that, or other items that might be also wasteful or inefficient. So we're trying to be as efficient as possible in delivering the services where and when they're needed, but also sort of maximizing that efficiency because you don't want to waste time driving and transportation and other things versus on site. So, but by doing that, we're able to sort of bring the best of both worlds to the maintenance scenario, and you're not wasting salary and wasted fixed costs by having someone on site when it's not needed, and then still having to call outside vendors when you're have surge requests or surge times. We're sort of serving the needs up and down based on any given point in time, what those needs at a property are.
And that obviously rings true with the sort of stereotype, which I think is true quite often, in that property managers and property management firms are sort of having to do it all or manage it all, or be sort of the one-stop solution, be an all-arounder solution for something that they're potentially not an expert in. And I think obviously that overwhelms those teams quite often, which generally leads to poor performance and maybe a lackluster experience from the customer's perspective. With that in mind, I got a little bit of a leading question there, but like given that setup, curious to hear from you, like, with this approach, what are you trying to solve for? What are you trying to sort of do differently that's not necessarily been done in the past in this space?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is give our team members the opportunity to deliver excellence, let's call it excellence, around specific sets of goals that we orient around the ownership or developer of a property. So, so the roles that we'll have is someone who is in a high level business planning, property management strategy standpoint, which is sort of more akin to a regional manager in a traditional model. So someone with a high level of experience that is overseeing the overall business planning, revenue, expense control, team guidance of the pod team serving the portfolio or property. And then we have other roles like resident services manager role who is specifically oriented around driving a great resident experience. So they don't also have to do budgeting and also have to do marketing and also have to do leasing like a traditional assistant property manager or traditional property manager. They're focused on making sure the resident experience is amazing as much as possible within the context, goals, and budget of the property would allow for. But that is their specialization, resident services, that hospitality mindset, that customer service mindset, and resident experience mindset. Then we have additional roles in finance and handling AP and AR or rent collections, for instance, so they can take that off their plate with another role, another function. As I said, the high level sort of overall portfolio manager is that really high level team leader, pod leader. And then we have maintenance centralized. We also have leasing as a centralized, specialized role as well. So that, again, we're not asking a property manager or an assistant property manager to do leasing, to do a job that they don't want to do in the first place, right? We have professionally trained salespeople who are doing leasing in a centralized manner. Again, similar to what I mentioned in maintenance before, that is distributed across properties when they're needed. So you don't have to carry a salary load full-time year-round for an assistant manager that does leasing, right? You just don't need that. Instead, we do it on demand as needed. And seasonally, when there's more leasing required, you have more opportunity to do that. When there's less leasing required, you don't have to carry that expense salary load all year round on a property. So there's different components of it that really come into play to be as efficient as possible cost-wise, but delivering a higher level of services across the goals set out. Whether it's resident experience, if some properties and some owners want to really lean into more resident experience, others are sort of more budget cost conscious, and we can flex this around the needs of a property and of a portfolio of an ownership group to deliver the services that will help them achieve their goals. And that's the nice thing about it, is the flexibility that we have to do that.
You said something there that led me to what feels like low-hanging fruit to me, because I like to talk about it, but it really has to do with this the line that you said there around, property managers and sales and leasing and who's covering what, who's handling what. And I'm curious with this model, how you see the role of, call it, marketing, sales, and leasing all be a more tightly integrated package rather than these, what feels like oftentimes disjointed functions where sometimes, in the case of Authentic and our team, sometimes we're able to have a direct line with the leasing team and kind of understand the sales challenges or sales opportunities, whereas other times we're very disjointed and or cut off from sort of this other silo. How do you see that, or how is that integrated in this approach?
Yeah, so, well, big picture, there's in almost every company in America, not just in ours, a disconnect between sales and marketing and how this works. It's even more amplified in this business because, again, you don't have someone in true sales roles. You have a manager or assistant manager who's also doing leasing and just trying to do 10 different things. Their brain is scattered. They're dealing with maintenance requests and also having to show someone an apartment. That's just a recipe for disaster. And also, never mind, there's absolutely no time to align with the marketing team, whether it's an in-house market at the centralized office or an agency or whatever else it might be. It just can't happen. Like, it's just ridiculous to think it's even possible that could happen in any sort of robust material fashion that drives property performance. And specifically, I know you and I have had this conversation a lot, marketing performance and leasing performance is all about driving revenue. And you cannot possibly have all those things together in one bucket. And where revenue comes from is obviously great leasing, but also great retention and resident experience. And you can kind of package those things together with a great overarching kind of message and marketing and branding of the property that really makes the whole thing sing in a maximal way. But to the point and the question you made specifically about how do you align those two things, by having a centralized professional leasing team that enables that team to focus solely on, hey, what's happening with marketing, how and aligning around is brand and marketing driving the right kind of leads. You have that closed loop of feedback that comes back to the marketing team, because the leasing team knows that one of the most important and critical parts of their job is to provide feedback from the residents and prospects that they're meeting with back to marketing so you can close the loop from marketing to sales and leasing. And that is the critical piece that is missing so often, that we're really trying to solve for by having the centralized professional leasing, as well as working with working with you guys to build a pretty amazing, complete and full closed loop revenue platform. And so I'm super excited about it because it is a huge gap in the market. You hear it time and time. You've heard it a million times. We've heard it and seen it a million times about just like, a property manager being like, well, there's not enough leads and I don't have time to do this. And marketing sucks or whatever. And then the marketing's like, well, is the leasing team, trained to convert leads? Is there a right showing pathway? Is there a good resident journey? Is the model unit staged properly? So all these things, and there's this disconnect, and there's a big sort of firewall between the two oftentimes, and that's what we're solving for. But the key thing is to really rethink the structure of the organization, have that professionalized leasing team that can then have the time, opportunity, and training to integrate with marketing.
Yeah, I second everything you said there. I think we're really excited too about working with a group like yours and being able to partner in a lot of projects nowadays where there is that cohesion that's moving back and forth between marketing and call it sales on the leasing side, because we're able to have these conversations in a more free-flowing manner that allows us, I think both on both sides, to do better work and have better outcomes for the properties. By the way, I think we've planted the seed for a future Real Wins conversation around marketing and sales speak and how those two departments commonly break down. And I think too, how no one person can carry the weight of all of that stuff at once. So, but I digress. We'll come back to that. Any other final thoughts around the pod model? Anything you're excited about or opportunities that you see kind of looking ahead here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm excited because these conversations that have happened in the past around quote unquote centralization are actually starting to bear fruit now. I think, truthfully, a lot of people are knee jerking and doing it the wrong way and just either like centralizing quote unquote a assistant manager and pretending they're centralizing, or implementing some sort of automation or AI and calling it centralization, where it's not that at all. The big picture, or the big thing here, is this is a complete rethinking of a multifamily operating model. And this works well, especially well, frankly, for this mid-market 50 to 150 units, because those have the tightest constraints, but it absolutely works well also on the larger scale. And we're excited to really be bringing this to market and doing it for our clients and owners in a way that's driving really impressive performance, I think, both on the revenue side, as we describe it, which is and also the operating side of the property across the board, to really be able to drive NOI in many very competitive markets. And yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited to be able to continue to expand what we're doing and continue to scale up and grow and deliver great results for more and more properties.
Love it. Yeah, can't wait to hear more about the Charlesgate pod model approach. I'm excited to be a part of some of those projects nowadays, and excited to continue to watch it grow into new areas of the country. So great one. Thanks again, Mike, for your insight today. I appreciate it. And let's meet here again soon and talk about the battle between marketing and sales. I look forward to it.
Awesome. Sounds great, man. Look forward to it as well.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.